All right.
This meeting.
All
Okay.
right. Welcome, everybody, listening from all around the world, all around this beautiful blue-green planet we call Gaia. Welcome, everybody here in Australia, our beautiful country. Welcome to the Mystic Drop, where each week we try and journey down the road less traveled by, as the great Robert Frost poetically put. I'm your host, Roberto Roya. Joining me today is a very special guest, Isabella Fin Di Fonzo. From the age of 12, she wanted to be a cop and helped people and wanted to help people save the world. After finishing high school at the age of 19, Isabella was sworn in as a police officer at Newtown. And when she transferred to Marrickville, she did the same. She eventually ended up as a community relations officer for the whole of the F district, from Sydney University all the way up to the Enfield, with 17 police stations under her control. Isabella set up all the neighborhood watch zones in that area and had to do a lot of public speaking and got a good look into the politics of everything. After 7 years of service, she left her last post with the anti-theft squad and had a huge urge to travel the world. In the early 90s, she left for Europe and moved to Paris. In 97, she met the love of her life, Gabriele Di Fonzo, and 6 months later moved to Milan, Italy, to build their life together. She is a strong, passionate woman, a leader, a truth warrior, and has always had that burning desire to question everything. Before the age of 9, she dodged death 3 times. And I would like to give a very warm welcome to not only this amazing woman, but also my Zia Auntie Isa. How you going, Isa?
I'm fine, Bert. How you going?
Oh, good, all
Good to be
good.
here. Okay.
Before we get started, you're our first time guest here.
Yeah. First time for me doing anything like this.
First time, yeah, there you go. And you get to hear our mystic drop incantation.
Cool.
Okay. So we are 2 cosmic spiritual beings, drops of light from the Great Spirit, sitting around the campfire. We start with a salute.
Too early for me.
And now we
in the
let
glass.
the magic flow.
That's excellent. That's very nice. Yeah,
So,
it's 8:30 in the morning here, so cheers for water.
a bit of water.
Mm.
So I'd like to start here, seeing your background. I know that most police officers around the world do a great job. They've got families, they've got responsibilities and regulations that they have to abide by. But the orders that they're asked to enforce these days, with COVID entering, it's entering an authoritarian and police state territory. How did we get here, in your opinion?
That's a big story. Okay, yeah, like you said, most cops, I think, when they join the job like me, you think you want to do something. You're young, you go in, you think you want to save the world, or whatever, for whatever silly reason you want to do it. When you get in, you find that it's something completely different. You just, because there are rules and regulations, are very military in its formation and its training. So there are rules and regulations to abide by. So you kind of find yourself clamped in. But where you can, there are always ways that you can help people and do things. So there's a lot of good can be done. I think that I joined in the early 80s, so it was a completely different world. I mean, even just looking at the uniform, and how this changed, it was sort of over a period of time, of course, by government policies and things that come in. And if you look at my uniform, when I first joined the cops, we had horrible uniform, but anyway, it was just a little skirt and a little top sort of thing, and we had a gun. Everybody had a sort of an issued 38 revolver, which we never had to use. In most cases, 99.9% of the time, the cops never would pull it out. But that was it. And I remember that when I was working in Newtown, of course, as you said, and some of the young guys would come in and we'd call them gun-ho, cowboys sort of thing, because they would have like extra bullets, like it was called a speed loader. And you'd have 6 bullets because, of course, the 38 holds 6 bullets. We were issued with 6 bullets with the gun. And then I think there might have been, there was a spare 6 bullets, which we had sort of in a little pocket type thing, which was attached to the belt. So you had it all up 12 bullets. That's all you had. I mean, as an issue, if you needed more, I mean, you're in a shootout or something like, you see on the TV. It's not like you're going to be able to shoot more than 12 bullets because that's all you've got, right?
Yeah.
So some guys would come in and they'd have these, what they call speed loaders. So, it's like if they needed to in a hurry, they could put these 6 bullets straight into their gun, and they'd have maybe, sort of on their belt or whatever. And that's basically all the equipment we had. We had when I joined, we had a small truncheon, the old truncheon days, and that was useless. You couldn't put it anywhere. Yeah. Then, of course, as the years went by, we were issued batons. We had training, and we were taught to use them in a way that, you weren't allowed to just go hitting people willy-nilly. We were trained properly how to sort of put someone down in a situation where you needed it, where there was violence. I had to use that a few times because, my life was threatened at the time or whatever. So it was, and never to hit anybody over the head or anything. There were defensive moves, more as a defensive baton. Okay. So over the time now, I can see, coming to Australia the last few times, I see how militarized the police, just their look, and that has it's an impression on people. It makes an impression on people to see the police officers with bullet vests. I mean, why do they need a bullet vest? It's crazy. And just all these things attached to themselves, and the boots and so they look like, the jack boots type thing. So very, very different look. And that is purposely done, when the money, the resources are being put in to that sort of thing, to make the police look more militarized. And, you can see that in America, you can see that pretty much even in the UK, where, you've got usually the image of the bobby walking down the street and, chatting and talking to people on foot patrol. Now, if you look at videos, you can see the police are less so in the UK as far as, if you compare them to the United States and Australia. But, recently I've seen videos of cops just, it's incredible, huge groups of them just walking through, hassling people, harassing people in the park, for example, for being outside. It's just, I don't know how we got there. But it's obviously a planned thing. These things don't happen without somebody making executive decisions. They come down from on high, and it filters down into the thing. So, and also it has to do with recruiting. I think, that, for example, when I joined the police, there were at any one time in the station, you had probably a collection of 150 years of experience. For example, that was you had the station sergeant, you had the superintendent, so if you had that collective experience, a young person like me, just coming into the job, I was a little bit confused. What do I need to do here? What do I need to do there? And, you had that sort of backup to rely on, and just ask somebody, just so you were making sure you did the right thing. And within the first couple of years, they had been taken away. Most of these positions were taken off, so as they just retired these old guys out. And within a couple of years, instead of having that 150 years of a collective experience, there was probably about 15 or 20 years experience. So a lot of young people coming in and not having the older ones there to, just to keep them in check. Sort of like, hey, you can't do that or whatever. But yeah, so it's I think it's a progressive thing that has come in, as I say, through government policies. I mean, the police are supposed to be, I suppose, independent, but they're getting their orders from up high, and those higher ups are getting their pressure from the politicians, and then so on and so forth. So it's very difficult to remain independent.
Going back to what you were saying, that the reason why it's like this, the police force, is that they're obviously getting their orders from higher up. And I think it comes down to, because it's not just one area of the police force, it's like all worldwide. So There's a
yeah, yeah.
conspiracy that there's a
Well,
cabal behind all this, right? What do you think?
yeah,
What do
of
you
course.
think?
I mean,
What do you think is the powers that be, their end game with all this? With all this control and
well, that's pretty obvious, isn't it?
authoritarian
You know,
ways that they're going through at the moment.
when you start to militarize your police forces, when you start to bring in draconian laws, you know, restricting people's freedoms, it's been done before. Just look in history and look at what happened in Russia, in communism. Look at what's happening in China. I mean, this is where we're going, and this has obviously been decided. Sure, you can call it cabal, you can call it the New World Order, you can call I mean, there's plenty of names, but there are people above our politicians. So people think that they're voting for a politician and the politician is actually making the decision. But, you know, they're being given directions. So there are these huge think tanks. And you can find that if you go on the internet, it's easy to find. The information's out there. So you look at something like the World Economic Forum. You know, they meet in Davos every year. It's all very secretive. There's the Bilderberg group. They are very rich people, very influential people. These are all people. There was just a recent one in America, I think in California, and there was all the tech giants there. So you had, you know, Bill Gates and Elon Musk, Bezos, all, you know, the usual suspects.
Yeah.
And they're all there making, but what they're doing in these things, it's not just like, you know, a boys club or whatever, and it's a big club, you know, and we're not in it. But the thing is that they're there making decisions, making policy decisions that, you know, will affect all areas of the world, all the areas of our lives. So, you know, I can imagine at the big tech meeting just recently, they'd be talking about transhumanism. That's the next big thing. So, you know, this is connecting our consciousness to the cloud. I mean, where's the cloud? As my mother, where's the cloud? She says, which cloud is it? No, but anyway, you got to keep a sense of humor through all this.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You know, it's not sort of this idea of you know men in black suits in dark rooms making decisions. They're kind of it's because the powers that be, or the power, whatever it is, the group, they're very, very elitist, and they're not the ones that we see. So the people, the Zuckerbergs and the Gates and all these people that we see making these decisions, even, you know, what's his name, Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum, these are the people that are the face of the decisions that are being made. And so you have all these think tanks, these groups, you know, and they all sound really good, and they use really nice words like, you know, equality and what is it, sustainable development, and these kind of words that they use. I mean, the words they use are very important as well. So these decisions are being made, and as I say, they trickle down and then they come through to the governments. You know, all the governments in the world, they all signed up to Agenda 21, for example. This was you know, and it's United Nations level stuff. So you've got all your different levels of power, and of course it just trickles down. So it trickles down to the local cop, you know, walking the beat, and then that depends then on that local cop what he or she wants to do, or it. I don't know what, you know, gender pronouns you're supposed to use nowadays, but that's another discussion. But the thing is that they can make a decision. Like, I know when I was a cop in the 80s, people may not know this, but university in Australia was fundamentally free. So you could go to university and pretty much not have to pay anything, even pay for your books or whatever, but over the fees. And there were obviously ways of not paying anything, not like the exorbitant fees they have today. And, you know, under Newtown, you have the Sydney University, one of the major universities in Australia. So I remember there were protests being held by students because the government was talking about bringing in fees. And at the time, it was a few hundred, you know, it seemed like a small amount, but they always start with a small amount, you know. And so, and of course, look what it is today. So we were supposed to go and break up the groups. They were doing sort of sit-ins or whatever they were doing, and it was going on for a few days. So I was actually put on duty to go to Sydney University and, you know, control the crowds or whatever, these students. I went off sick. I went on sick because I said, no, I agree with them. I'm not going
That
to
was
go
your
on a
moral compass to say,
absolutely
I'm not
because
doing that.
yeah, so you don't have to. Nobody can force you to this just because the law is there or something. I mean, if you're not the same thing, I did the same thing during the Anzac Day march. There were a group of women who just wanted to march there peacefully with the soldiers to represent women who were raped and killed during the war, you know, in all the wars, of course. I mean, it's just a major part of war, isn't it? It always has been. The women are you know, they're probably, I don't say the biggest victims, but they're a huge set of victims that are there. So these women just wanted to walk, you know, march and represent them. Of course, there was a big hoo-ha. They couldn't do it, and all the you know, whatever they're soldiers, they were saying that they didn't want it. So anyway, I was put on duty for that day as well, for Anzac Day, and I went off sick because I wasn't going to do it.
So that's your own way of protesting as well.
Yeah, exactly. We knew that we were going to be there specifically to arrest these women who were going to march illegally because they hadn't been given permission. Well, I just went off sick.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you got to take your own stance, you've got to say no. You get to a certain point. I mean, and, you know,
do you ever see? Well, I don't know about in Australia, but I hope it happens. But do you ever see the police force joining the people if it gets to a certain point of,
it can happen.
you know, total tyranny?
Look, it's happened. Look at some footage. I don't know if you've seen it because, of course, the mainstream media is not going to show you anything, but you've got to go looking for it. But in France, you know, Macron just was trying to bring in these laws about the green, you know, vaccine card. They call it green card. What the hell does that mean? But anyway, they've got to make it sound nice. But what it is, you know, we're coming towards, like in Nazi Germany, I'm going to have to wear a yellow star soon or something to show that I'm unvaccinated, you know. So, but the police, there were many police who were actually marching with the people. There was huge crowds in not only in Paris, but all over cities in France.
I think it happened in Germany as well.
Also in Germany, there is a big march happening in London, you know, and there've been several of these big marches happening against lockdowns and just against the way that we're going. And they've been getting bigger and bigger and bigger every single time. And you realize that the BBC doesn't even cover it.
No, that's right.
So, you know, as far as the BBC is concerned, these marches of millions of people, hundreds of thousands of people don't even exist. I know they've had them in Australia as well. You know, people have just got to get up and stand up for their rights. The problem is, you know, we are the 99%, you know, and we don't realize that we have that power. Of course, you know, I don't like to use the word elite because elite sounds like they're actually good. But, you know, these people who have the money and the power, they are terrified that we will wake up and say, hang on a second, we don't need to do this, you know, and there's no need to be violent. There's no need. I mean, this is the problem when you do have these big crowds and you can be out there with all the goodness in your heart. In a crowded situation, it's so easy to get out of control. And all they need to do is send in, you know, the agent provocateurs, the classic. I mean, this has happened in the Black Lives Matters movements and all over the place, where it just breaks into violence. And then they say, oh, look at those crazy people. They're violent, they're anarchical. And, you know, it's so easy. It's so easy to send in people, you know. And I mean, I've heard reports, and I can't say this is for true, but, you know, I've heard reports of, for example, during the Yellow Vest protests, you know, the police were actually going in just in plain clothes and causing havoc themselves, you know. I mean, look, even if you look into what's going on in the United States now, there's a big thing about the FBI actually, you know, infiltrating groups and then inciting them to do things, to break the law. And so what was it? There was a whole stack of people arrested recently. But
that was before Trump left.
Oh no, it's happening right now. I mean, if you go on now, I think
because that happened with Trump as well. I think. To get in there.
Like, you know, that whole thing on the 6th of January when they stormed the White House. You know, I saw the footage of that, and there were the police actually moving the rails, the guardrails that were, you know, the perimeter of the White House, actually allowing these people to come in. There was just nothing to stop them opening the doors, letting them in. It was so obviously a setup, because the thing is that they can use that then afterwards, which is what they have now. You know, the White House is barricaded. they've put in, I don't know how many millions of extra dollars to secure the White House. So there's a perimeter around it. It's crazy. I mean, and America's supposed to be the seat of freedom and liberty and all that sort of thing. So I don't know. I mean, there are people there obviously trying to do something as well. I think we're just sort of being bombarded from so many different directions that it's really, really hard. I can understand how people are confused. And this has been, if we go into this whole COVID thing, it's been going on for the last year and a half. Governments have employed behavioral psychologists to understand better how to control and manipulate people. So it's been a campaign of fear and confusion. Yeah. Now these are the two, they hit the lizard brain. This is the thing that people will react to immediately. So if you've listened to anything in the mainstream media, and I could hear this from the beginning of last year, it's just propaganda, because there's nobody questioning it. Once upon a time, I remember journalists on the TV being actually hard hitting and trying to make our politicians or whatever feel uncomfortable, or us, the cops, make them feel uncomfortable. And they don't do that anymore. It's just one-sided. Anybody who tries to ask certain questions, they just get deplatformed. Simple as that. Or they don't get onto the mainstream. I've got to say though, and I have seen on YouTube, of course, the Sky Australia seem to be the only ones actually speaking up and asking questions, which is great.
Well, you've got Alan Jones, and he's doing a very good job.
Doing a great job, I've got to say.
He's
I remember
really
him he used to be on the radio, and I don't know, I never listened to him, but I always, heard people saying, oh, he's really crazy, he's really right, got crazy ideas. And at the time, when you start to get informed and you find out the alternative information, well, it's not even alternative, I don't even like to use the word, when you find out facts. So for example, you're looking at statistics of cases and all this sort of thing, and how many people have died and all that sort of thing that's going on at the moment.
Yep.
You can't help but think, hang on a second. I mean, even now, I think most people around the world feel like there's something not right. Something's out of place. Everybody's got that kind of feeling, but there's this kind of fear attached to it. There's the fear and the expressed confusion that has been put out there, by changing the laws every 5 seconds. Here in Italy, we've got new laws coming out every 5 seconds, and nobody knows what's going on. So a lot of people are just like, whatever. But this whole campaign too to get the jab, and just pushing all the time. But what they do, like I said, they always start with something small. So at the beginning it was, we just need to do a lockdown for a couple of weeks just to, flatten the curve, save the hospital system, from ruin. And then of course it gets longer and longer, and then there's something else to be afraid of. I mean, if we remember 2 years ago, we were all terrified to go out on the streets because we were, some crazy terrorist in a car or would be carrying a bomb or something was going to blow us up. Where'd they go? They're all terrified of the COVID too. Yeah, they all disappeared. So there's always got to be something. It's really Orwellian. I mean, if you've read 1984, I mean, there's always a war happening somewhere. There's always something to be frightened of. So they've got to keep that level of fear up, because fear equals control. It's a red flag. Equation.
It's a red flag again.
Well, I wouldn't call it a red flag. A red flag is something that's planned and organized. I mean, I think it is planned and organized. They've been waiting for something long. I'm not saying there's no virus, because there is a virus out there. I know people that who know people that have died and what have you. It's a nasty flu.
What I was saying is, I mean, from the sense of, did it really come from the wet market, or did it come from the Wuhan lab? And did they already have the vaccine ready to distribute out to the public?
Well, from what I can gather, and you can't say, because nobody, I mean, I don't have all the facts, obviously. Yeah. But from what I've gathered is, yes, of course, it came out of the lab. They were working on, and not only in that lab, there are many labs around the world where they're doing this gain of function research. Gain of function research just means, playing around with viruses, mixing them together and see what we come up with, basically, It's ridiculous, and it's supposed to be banned, but anyway, they do it. So the fact is that it came from, let's say, it came from there. It spread out across the world. I don't know that they did it purposely. I couldn't say that, but they certainly had the paperwork in place. It's like, because as soon as this thing happened, they had all of a sudden, they had all this legislation, they had all this paper of guidelines and all this stuff. So it's like they had these papers sitting on a shelf ready to go. So just waiting for the right opportunity. So, you never can waste a good opportunity. So the fact of the matter is that it's a form of flu, okay, because it's a respiratory virus. The facts are that people die of flu every single year.
Yeah,
that's a fact.
yeah.
The fact is that pretty much all the health systems across the world, if you look at the NHS in the UK, here in Italy, we had a good system, that they have been over the years, over the last 20 years or so, just gradually, again, these small little steps that people can't see, it's the boiling frog syndrome, that they're taking away, funding from this and then that, and privatizing certain sections. And so, so if you've got a hospital, let's say you've got 1,000 beds in your hospital system, 20 years ago, and now you've only got 500, and then you've got to put them down to 250 because you've got to have your social distancing in your hospital and close down certain sections. Well, of course, you're going to have an overrun hospital because you've got a few extra 100 people with the flu. And don't forget how many people just ran to the hospital, at the beginning, to because they had a bit of a flu symptom. Yeah. So of course the hospitals are overrun, but they built these hospitals, these Nightingale hospitals or whatever they were calling them. They were hardly even used. Most of them were empty. They packed them up and put them away. I mean, so you've got to look at, people just need to stop and regain their sense of reasoning, their ability to reason and to look, again, have rational thought. Yeah. Again, because we're so many people are just functioning on panic, on fear and confusion, which is not their fault, because look, if they're listening to the TV, and which a lot of people do, especially the elderly, they listen to that all day. I don't know how they do, but that's it. They're getting this constant yeah, well, look, news used to be news. There'd be a half an hour thing on the TV. You get, the main points and off you go. Now it's 24 hours entertainment. Yeah. That's what it is. So they've got to keep their ratings going. This is a bonanza because really got to admit it. The mainstream media over the last few years has been falling because, young people don't watch TV anymore. Young people go on the internet. They don't watch TV. So really, it's just the older generation and my generation. Some people from, I suppose, from your generation, but they're not sitting there 24 hours a day watching TV like these older generations are. So this is completely, people brainwashed the people, and so I can understand their fear and confusion. I mean, here, like everywhere else, this is the same thing. You've got the same. It's what they call lockstep. Okay, people using this word lockstep, and then straight away last year, all the places. I mean, I was looking at different things in French, in Italian, German, around the world, using this term. The new normal. How can you have a new normal before you've even finished with the old normal? I mean, it just started, and we said we have to get used to the new normal. This is the new normal. Like what? And this was, I was thinking this at the beginning of last year. I thought, what does everybody do? This is crazy. Listening to the news, at the time my husband was still alive, so he liked watching the news. And I said to him, turn that stuff off. Can't you hear it's propaganda? This was after the first 2 weeks. It was just the same, bam, bam, bam. I said, what happened to all the other stuff that was happening in the world? Yeah. Is this the only thing that exists? Yeah. And so then that goes into also how many people, like my husband, who were refused care. He had appointments and things that he had to see. He certainly had some health problems, but he wasn't. They were all his appointments were cancelled. When I rang the hospital, they said, "Oh no," I said, "Look, we'll pay. We'll just whatever the private fee is, you have to pay because we have a public hospital system here." And they said, "No, the whole section has just been closed down. We're not doing that." So anybody who had any kind of illness or any kind of cancer, or how many people have died from that, just being, because if you didn't have COVID, well, then you were just neglected.
Yeah.
That was it. You know, so I put that down, you know, the fact that he died was, put it down to COVID. Not so far that he had COVID, he had 2 tests, he didn't have it. But that's, you know, it's just life.
Protocols around it.
Yeah. I mean, but it's so easy when people now are running around like crazy idiots, talking about, well, which vaccine have you got? This is a new conversation. Oh, which vaccine have you got? Oh, Pfizer. Oh, this one. Yeah,
It's like a brand. It's like a
it's
Nike
a brand.
or Nike or Adidas.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's really branding and saying, you know, it's just unbelievable. But how people are just, they see it as the only solution, because that's what we've been told. The only way out of this is the jab, you know, and people are not looking into what it is. You know, I ask people, because, you know, lots of people here had it, young people as well. Unbelievable. I know one family, like they got the whole kids, everything done. Youngest one is 12. And what do you say to somebody like that? And I said, so I asked them, I said, oh, okay. And I said, so what did the doctors tell you? What information did you get? Oh, yes, no, I know. I spoke to a pediatrician and yeah, they said, yes, absolutely. It's really helpful. Really, yeah, it'll be fine. I said, I didn't say anything, because what are you going to say to someone like that? I mean, how can you, it's experimental, you know? So I don't know. It's really hard. It's really hard to, you have to try and talk to people in a way that, you know, you don't want to be attacking them. You don't want to say, oh, you know, you're an idiot. You're being conned. You're being fooled.
Yeah.
Because, you know, people don't want to hear that. But it's really hard for them, because often they say, but why? Why would they do this? You know, why would our government do this to us? It's really hard. It's just, yeah, really hard to enlighten people. Yeah.
If you were still in the police force and you rose up to, you know, quite a high position, what measures would you take to ensure that the people don't lose their freedoms? You know, is there anything that you could do if you got to that level?
Well, first of all, one of the reasons why I left was because I realized that, yeah, I could have gone really far. But the fact that I was so young and I was ordered to take that position as far as being the community relations officer for F District, was actually ordered to do it because I was chosen. I don't know why. I chosen to do some things. I don't know why. But I realized that there were only certain things you could do. There was a limit to what you could do. So, for example, I had to go to meetings. Like I was saying, I was setting up all these neighbourhood watches around the inner west of Sydney. And it was the big thing at the time. And look, the idea of a neighbourhood watch is a really fantastic thing. So what it was you had people on the ground, so, you know, your neighbours, and the police would organise these neighbours and to talk to each other so that they knew who belonged in their street, who didn't belong in their street. And then that was supposed to, you know, they had little groups. And so if they had information, then that head of the group would then ring the police and say, oh, I'm head of, you know, whatever zone, and there's something happening here, you know, and inform the police. And then the police were supposed to react. The problem was that there was money behind it. The NRMA had huge amounts of money invested. There was also another company involved. Can't remember. I think they were from Melbourne, another insurance company anyway. They had big money invested because, of course, if they could reduce the crime, they could reduce the money they had to pay out in insurance. Okay, there was obviously monetary benefits involved. But again, I thought the idea of the scheme was good. So, of course, I had to set up all these meetings. At the same time, I had to go to these big meetings in headquarters in Sydney. And there you had all the bigwigs, you know, people with what we call pips on the shoulders. You know, they had all the little buttons and things. And I didn't have anything. I mean, I wasn't even a first-class constable at the time. First-class constable means you had 5 years service. So I had about 3 or 4 years service at the time. So, you know, sit there listening to it, and it was very, we have to, you know, it was more like we have to the push. We have to have more zones. And when I said, well, hang on a second, you know, I actually stood up. It was really scary because, you know, these people were so outranking me. I think the next rank up from me was a sergeant. So I was really, really junior in this pile of blue lines sort of thing. And I said, well, just let's hang on a second. I said, shouldn't we be just slowing it down a little bit so that we can have time to have meetings with the police that are supposed to be policing this idea, because they have no idea. And the police were really, really reluctant to go along with it at the time, because, you know, I mean, the police on the ground, because they didn't understand what it was, and they didn't understand how it could benefit them. All they knew was that there was some guy who, you know, wannabe cop, ringing up, and because, you know, there was always people in the public that were, you know, oh great, I get to be a bit of a cop and, you know, play the game sort of thing. So they would ring up and they'd be really gung-ho and sort of say, oh, I'm so and so, like as if they had an importance, you know, because I'm head of the, you know, neighborhood watch group number 3, whatever, and there's this and this, and you have to come, or you have to do. So cops don't like being told by, you know, members of the public what to do. They don't like that. And so they were very anti. So it was like there was this little battle going on. So when I said that, and this is, you know, coming back to your question, I was just, you know, shut down. No. What are you talking about? No, we can't afford to stop now. We have to, because we have to beat Melbourne, because that's right. I think there was a Melbourne insurance company and our, you know, NRMA, and they were sort of in competition who could get the most zones set up, you know, in a shortest amount of time. Oh, they've done this, we have to do this, you know. And so you get these orders from up high, and it's very, very difficult. I think, no, I mean, that was one of the main reasons why I left, because when I, you know, left that job, and then I went into the anti-theft squad, which was a really successful squad. We weren't detectives. We were just, you know, normal cops, but we did sort of half undercover, half uniform. We had a lot of information in the whole of F district. Again, it was that inner west, big crime area at the time in Sydney. And we had lots of information from the little crims down on the ground to the bigger things. And, you know, people coming to us to get information. We had really, really good source of information, really high arrest rate. And I think the local detectives were a bit jealous of our level of freedom that we had, and also the fact that we were, you know, so successful. We had a good rapport with the local crims. You know, we weren't hassling them. We were just, you know, getting information from them and trying to get the, you know, especially when drugs and stuff were involved. So, and it was sometimes just really hard. And this comes down to, you know, again, another part of that question is the corruption. It's so hard. It's so hard because there is corruption there. And, you know, from my small experience of 7 years, I came across it quite a lot of times. And it's really hard. It's really hard to be the one shouting out about it. And especially at the time, being so young, and it was really hard. So I think at that time, you know, our group got split up. So we were so successful, as I said, and they split us up at the height of the success. And so basically they disbanded all the, and this was supposed to work hand in hand with the neighborhood watch groups. This was another sort of thing that came out of the neighborhood watch idea. This, you know, small groups of anti-theft squads, just to really, you know, bring the theft down. And it was working. But anyway, they split us all up for some unknown reason. At that time, I just remember being really angry. I thought, hang on, this is just ridiculous. You can't fight against the system. So, and I have to remember, you have to remember that, you know, going back to the discussion before, the higher ranking cops and who were there to, you know, give support or whatever. At that time, so many people, it was a mass exodus of really good cops. Like if I had to think of the really good cops that I worked with, one by one, they were leaving. Because, you know, the pay was pretty crap as you went up higher. I mean, to start with, it's pretty good. As a young person, I thought, oh, wow, I'm earning all this money. It's great. But as you went up, it was just not really worth your while to do what you were doing. And, you know, that then opens the door for corruption, because if you're not earning enough and you got your bills to pay and you got, you know, kids' schools to pay for, whatever, the dentist, whatever you got to pay for, you know, yeah, it opens the door for corruption, because you're going to, if you're desperate, you're going to probably maybe take money from somebody or do something that benefits whatever. God. And so I think that, you know, you either decide, well, you're going to fight it, but you try to and nothing happens. You report things, nothing happens. Or you just leave because somebody, you know, offers you a better job and you can you know, double the money. I left, and I went to work in real estate for a bit. I was earning twice the money straight away, like that, without any experience or anything. And I was earning twice the money and I didn't like that job, so I left it. But
At least
thing
you had
is
a good conscience about you.
oh
Come
yeah,
home and you could just
sometimes it's really hard to
yeah.
keep that, oh, there's so many. I'm going to tell you cop stories, but I mean, it's so many. Yeah, there's so many things that happen, and you see them happen, and at the time you're just thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? You feel like really in a very awkward situation because you just don't know how to react, because you've got to work with these people. You've got to. There's a balance, especially at the time, being a female in that job at the time. It's not like today. You had to be really careful of what you said and what you did, and but that was just my experience. But I think that probably the number one problem in the world today is corruption. Yeah, if you think about, if you want to be a politician and get up high, I would suspect that most of them are compromised in some way. Then you can go down the road of compromise in the way that they're allowed to go. That's what I'm saying. How do you get to the top?
Yeah,
you have to compromise yourself to be able to get to the top. It's really, really difficult. In some way, somebody will have something on you, some sort of dirt on you, so that they can pull the string when that moment is right. So if you're looking at presidents, prime ministers, whatever, little puppets on a string, you think of that idea, because somewhere, somebody might have some dirt on you. You took a bribe somewhere, or you did some favor for somebody you weren't supposed to do, or you got, caught with your pants down with somebody that you shouldn't have been. Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah. It's just, yeah. I don't want to go into too many details.
That's a whole other
like a whole other ball game. But corruption, it does, like, simplified, it's corruption. Corruption of on all levels. And that's what we're looking at now. It's corruption of the human soul. This is what we're coming down to. Don't hug somebody, don't touch somebody, don't talk to somebody. What was it, the health minister in New South Wales the other day? She said, just don't talk to somebody. Like, if you see somebody in the supermarket, don't talk.
They were even saying the other day, I read somewhere, you can't sing anymore. It's like, what?
No, not allowed to sing. No.
Crazy.
You're not allowed to do anything that is joyful or creative or makes you a human being.
Killing the arts.
You know what I can't stand from the very beginning of this whole thing was this.
Yeah. And then they cough into their elbow anyway.
Yeah, I know.
It doesn't make any sense.
I just say, what are you doing? I mean, anybody who does that to me, I said, that's rude. That used to be rude, like you get a foul in basketball for doing stuff like that.
It's like they're trying to rip our humanity away from us,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Everything that's so natural to us, they're trying to take it away.
This is more than what it seems. The deeper you go into it, it's really, this is a battle for the soul of humanity. It's a spiritual thing. There's so much evil in the world. Like I say, you go down the road of the Epstein case. Well,
that we need to do another episode on that. Just that. But I was going to say,
there's so much. There's so many things. Yeah.
Talking about,
but it's definitely.
But like going on this line of corruption, a lot of people are, they're calling for trials to commence as soon as possible, like what happened with the Nuremberg trials of the 1940s against the Nazi parties. Because you've been on the other side and you've seen the corruption and everything, how would you see it all play out? And with everything that's going on today?
I think, because there are people in different countries trying to do different things. There's a German lawyer doing some good work at the moment. There's been cases in the UK that I know about. People pushing for some kind of justice. But it's really difficult. The courts are compromised. A lot. I'm not saying that all the judges are any compromised. There are some that are coming through with some good verdicts. I mean, for example, in the UK, I've heard that a lot of people who got fines and things for doing, for being out in the park or whatever, they went to court with them and they've won. They haven't had to pay the fine. So, it doesn't really stand up. A lot of these laws are not actually laws, they're mandates. So they're not actually brought into law, but people just think they're laws because the government tells you to do something. So it's really important for people to know their rights. This is something that you need to inform yourself. You need to, because nobody's going to tell you your rights. This is the thing, nobody's going to tell you what you can or can't do. I mean, in some way, they'll tell you what you can't do, but they won't tell you what right you have to do something. So, it comes down to I think I'd love to see that. I think maybe eventually it will, because I'm really afraid that there's going to be a lot of death in the next few years. It's my opinion, but it's based on not just what I think, but what I've heard from a lot of experts, people in the field who are not allowed to speak because they're not giving the party line. So, we call them, I don't even know whether to say the word, because you're going to go on YouTube, and I don't know if this, but so the jab is actually, they use the word vaccine, okay, but it's actually not. Vaccine is actually taking a part of the virus of the disease and put it in your arm, and then your immune system will come and fight it and recognize it, because it's very weakened form, and you build up your immunity that way. This is not doing that. These are sort of, and maybe you should get an expert on, someone who can explain it better than I can. But from what I've understood, it's certainly not that. It's doing something else. It's doing something else quite destructive inside your body. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you want to go there and talk about that. So
feel free, continue.
Well, just that I know that, for example, the Japanese government asked Pfizer for some of their data. So what I know the Pfizer does is actually creates a spike protein in your body, and which sort of mimics the virus. So they say they can tweak it, as the virus progresses, they can tweak this spike protein. But what's happening, instead of it just being one spike protein that, your body, your immune system goes, it attacks, this spike protein is going right throughout the whole body, going into your heart, your lungs, your liver. And they found, or there was an autopsy done on somebody who died after having it, and in Japan, and they found a huge amount, and the Pfizer data shows a huge amount of this spike protein gathered in the uterus, in the ovaries, and in the testicles of men. So, like I say, if they're giving this out to young people, when I say to people, so how can you, because here, I don't know about in Australia, here you have to sign the form. So you personally take responsibility for taking the vaccine, because the governments have given all the pharmaceutical companies indemnity, okay, which means they're not financially responsible. The governments, of course, they could be responsible, but you're signing away their responsibility by taking responsibility yourself. So, but how can I, in all good consciousness, sign that piece of paper when I can't say for certain what the effects of this drug are going to be in the next few years, when the companies themselves don't know, because they have this it hasn't been tested. So I know that, because I've heard from more than one source. So I'm presuming it's right. I would like to see the data myself. You've got to go and find these things. And sometimes really hard to find things nowadays, because a lot of things get taken off. But so, you can take it with a pinch of salt or whatever, what I'm about to say. But the animal testing that they did do on this, medication, all of the animals died within 2 years.
Wow.
So I don't know what's going to happen. Anything can happen. And, it's so easy for when people, because like even now, they're talking about people who've had the vaccine, they're getting infected, and they're apparently infecting others. So I don't know. I mean, it's just so easy for them to say, oh, they got COVID or they got the flu, and that's what killed them. You see what I mean? Because nobody's actually asking the questions. But I know in the UK they have the yellow card system. In America they have the VARS system, which is called VARS, which is a system where if you've had a vaccine and you have a bad reaction for whatever it is, even if it's just a headache or flu, whatever, fever, you can go on there and report it. There have been deaths. There have been many deaths. of people are straight after having these. So, you know, but the questions are not being asked, and nobody, you know, where are the journalists who should be holding these people accountable? That line of our defense has gone. See, that the journalists are the ones that need to be there telling the truth. And, you know, there are other things to talk about there, but, you know, they're not doing their job. They're just not doing their job. So, you know, if there are going to be some Nuremberg trials, they should be hauled in over the coals as well for you know, propagating this kind of fear. And, you know, they're part of the problem. Yeah. They're really part of the problem. I don't know where we're going to end up. It's certainly interesting times that we live in. It's
how have you been dealing with everything? Like, you know, you got a young, you know, your daughter's about to come into womanhood, and how have you been?
Nearly 20.
Yeah, how have you been dealing with everything?
Come into womanhood. That sounds lovely. Yeah, it's cool, very poetic. Yeah, no, I don't watch TV. Number one, you know, like I'll watch a film or something. You know, we've got Netflix, but I don't watch TV. So that's number one. If you didn't watch or listen to anything of the news, COVID doesn't exist, because I don't know anybody who had it. I mean, I met one guy here in the town walking his dog with, you know, while I was out walking my dog, and he was fine. I mean, he's about my age. He had it. He was pretty sick, and he got over it, and he's fine. So most people do recover from it. But yeah, it's been hard insofar as, you know, what happened to my husband, and that was really frustrating. I'm still very angry about that. Because, you know, the frustrating things for me is the way they've been treating old people, like, you know, just shoving them into nursing homes without testing them or whatever. And then you get this, you know, big flare up, of course. So they just don't care, locking them down, you know, telling them they can't see their grandchildren, their families, you know, people having to see their loved ones through a glass window. It's just cruel. It's really cruel. And for the young ones, you know, she's okay. I mean, she had a lot of study to do this year. She finished school. She did a great job. Everything was fine. But you know, just being able to go out, this is the time of their life. This is the best years. God, things I did at that age. You know, I want her to have those freedoms. I want her to be able to just, you know, go out without a care and not have to worry. I mean, she's going away tonight, so hopefully to Croatia with her friends. You know, after school, you go somewhere.
Yeah.
But, you know, she's got to go and have a COVID test first, which means, you know, shoving some big long stick up her nose. And hopefully it'll be negative, and then she can go. If it's positive, she won't be able to go because she won't be able to travel. I mean, and she's already at an age where she can rationalize and say, okay, well, you know, she can inform herself as well. I mean, she doesn't like me going on too much about it, of course, you know, like, Mum, shut up. But, you know, I look at the younger kids. So, for example, here, since last year, they've had a mask mandate. So we've had to wear masks everywhere, indoors, outdoors. You're supposed to wear a mask. I don't, but, you know, that's it. That's my civil disobedience. I do when I have to go into a supermarket or something, because they won't let me in otherwise. But, you know, I put it on, then I shove it down, and then somebody might come along every now and then say, oh, you know, you've got to cover your nose. Oh, sorry, it slipped. And it's ridiculous. The whole thing's ridiculous. But anyway, the kids, and I'll go past the local primary school, and they're outside playing with they're running around like little kids do. They're all, you know, from 6 to 10-year-olds sort of thing, 6 to 11-year-olds. And they've got the masks on. And there's the teachers yelling at them, because, like, you know, I saw 2 little kids that were coming up to hug each other. And the teacher's going, no, you've got to keep separate. I mean, come on. And just think of the little kids. I mean, I know you've got your beautiful little baby, especially here in, you know, especially countries like Italy, where everybody's just wearing these masks all the time. Where are these kids going to learn facial recognition, facial expression? You know, those first 2-3 years are so essential. Babies look at people's faces all the time. You know, the other day I was in a shopping center just lining up for a coffee, okay? And the mother was in front of me, so she had her back to me. And she had a little baby in a pram, about the same age as your daughter, you know? And she was looking up at me, and I had this stupid mask on. So I pulled the mask down and I started smiling at her. Her face lit up like unbelievable. It was so beautiful to see. And I had to quickly put it back on before the mother turned around, because, you know, you get yelled at or something. So it's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, totally useless. I mean, there's just no science behind the whole mask thing, but it's part of the fear thing. You know, you see everybody walking around in masks. You know, I see people riding their bikes. There's no, I mean, where I live, I'm not in a big city. I'm, you know where I am. There's nothing big.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that, should I? But anyway, it's out in the open. I've got, you know, forest I can walk in. So I'm out with my dog walking. So I haven't really been that restricted. I haven't allowed myself to be involved. But of course, yeah, I mean, it means now I'm doing my work online rather than, you know, seeing my you know, students face to face, and not all the time. So I've still got some, you know, but it's just this wariness. People are really scared. This is the thing. They've weaponized human beings. They've done the classic thing, you know, they've just weaponized people, weaponized the children, because the kids are told, oh, no, don't go and see grandparents, you might kill them. I mean, what is that? So you can imagine growing up with that, with that mentality. What is this generation going to be? Now they might be like just really rebellious because they say, hang on, this, but you know when you grow up with something, it just seems normal.
Yeah.
So
people have already got a natural essence of anxiety within them, naturally, as a human being. Oh, yes, well, this is going to escalate it to a point where they won't be able to function as human beings.
Yeah, I know, but they've started that. That's perfect. That's perfect for the agenda or whatever you want to call it, because, you know, it's always about control. I mean, these are tactics that have been used before. It's not something new. It's just that it's what surprised me, how quickly people have acquiesced to this. You know, just gone along with the program, because it's, I don't know. Here in Italy, if you know Italians, they're lovely people. They're open and, you know, whatever, but they love to talk about their illnesses. You know, so they're always paranoid. I mean, I said, like when my daughter was young, she, you know, I would let her just sort of walk around barefoot in the park or whatever, and you know, the people, and there were mothers there with, you know, this gel stuff or whatever. I'm trying to clean all those nappy wipes or whatever. Always every 5 seconds, cleaning their kids' faces, their hands. They're playing in the park. This is where they're getting, you know, the contact with all the bacteria. That's what our bodies are. Our bodies are bacteria and viruses. That's what we were made from. The major part of our bodies are that, you know, microbes and all this sort of thing. Little creepy crawlies running around. I mean, if you, I mean, there've been documentaries done on this stuff, so, you know, you can see it if you want it. But that's the thing. That's how our immune system builds and grows and gets stronger. You know, and if you start taking that away, especially from the kids, their immune system hasn't even had a chance. And then if you're going to put a jab on top of that, then yeah, the kids, they're like, it's like making, you know, it's a pharmaceutical companies making clients for the future. Yeah, one kid at a time. That's what it is. Making clients for the future, one kid at a time.
I've absolutely loved this conversation, and I've got to get you back on the show. There's so much.
Oh, okay. Well, God, we've been talking for ages.
Yeah. I'm definitely going to get you back, because there's so much more that we just couldn't cover today. I want to, you know, talk about Julian Assange and especially everything. But we'll save it for another show.
Look, Julian Assange. There's your classic example of how the media now has been coward, because they took this guy, whether you like Julian Assange or not, you know, with his personality, different thing. But what he did with WikiLeaks, he never once, and I don't think there's any publication in the world that can state this, never once published anything that was not true.
Exactly.
And that's incredible, because that's one thing I will say. When I was in the cops, one thing that really started waking me up to this, you know, paradigm that we live in, this false, how, you know, the way it's so easy to just spread untruths. Because, you know, I worked on certain cases, I knew the facts, and I'd read about it the next day in the newspaper, and I thought, what is this crap? This is completely, this didn't happen.
Yeah.
So they were just making stuff up. So I thought, if they can do that, you know, then what else are they telling us? So, you know, you just, one thing leads to another. And Julian Assange is just a classic example of that. But what has he done? He's still rotting away in a prison. He should not be there. So it's incredible. I mean, I know that his mental state is in jeopardy as well at the moment, because he's in a top security prison with the worst criminals in the UK. Unbelievable, in solitary confinement for so long. Because I mean, basically, he was in solitary confinement when he was in the embassy as well. So that's just cruel. And, you know, that goes against all levels of acceptability. Unbelievable. What it does is send a message to other journalists to say, yeah, come on, yeah, just try
Test
and
us,
publish
test us.
See where we'll take you. Yeah, we'll hound you. I mean, his life's been threatened. His family's life's been threatened so many times. There's so much involved there. Poor guy. I mean, they have to let him go.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely gonna get you back on the show, because you're a wealth of knowledge. You're a beautiful spirit.
No, I don't know.
And
No, just like, I don't know everything, obviously, but you know, I just like to.
I love your mind.
Go in a deep dive.
You know, you look at things in a different way, and this is what the show's all about. So
yeah,
thank you so much.
You know, okay, no worries.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming. No, we're gonna do it again soon, eh?
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll do some more research.
All right, Isa. This is the Mystic Drop. I'm Roberto Roya. That was Isabella Fin Di Fonzo. Thank you, everybody. Ciao.
Ciao.